Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I've got the privilege and the honor of growing up a University of Illinois fan, the leading scorer in the history of University of Illinois basketball, Deon Thomas. How you doing?
Hey, Brett, I'm doing well, man. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you. And just looking forward to having a great conversation with you.
Absolutely. I am as well. So, I grew up in Mattoon, Illinois, just south of Champaign there. So I got to watch you play a lot of basketball, which was fun. And so I was back in my prime. I was, trying to be a basketball player. I wasn't quite 6'9", but hey, that's all right. But anyway, man, like on all the Circuit of Success shows, we always like to start with what made you the man you are today. And I know that's a wide open question, but just want to start with maybe what made Deon Thomas the man he is today.
It's really a combination of life experiences and the people that you have in your life. Your teachers, your mentors, those are the people that are extremely important in forming who you are, like I said, as well as going along with your life experiences and your environment. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, which all of us watch the news and we see how hectic some of the things can be here in Chicago. Now with social media, you see more of it. But these are the same things that have been around since I was a kid. My wife and my kids, my two daughters, make fun of me because I hate to sit with my back to the door when I'm in restaurants or I'm out in public because I'm nervous. And this is a little PTSD from being a kid,
right.
For sure. And I sit on the floor a lot of the time when I'm watching television. Now some of your listeners will be like, well, why is he doing that? That's kind of crazy, especially when I have hardwood floors and not carpet. But, growing up as a kid, we had to sit on the floor because of, a lot of the gunfights and gunfire that would happen in my neighborhood. So my grandmother especially would be like, when I lived with my mother, we lived in a 15-story apartment building. So you didn't necessarily have to worry about that. But my grandmother, both grandparents, lived on lower floor houses. So, the chance of a stray bullet coming through your window was real. So we spent a lot of the time sitting on the floor at night watching television. And those are the kind of things that have carried over still to this day. And I'm 48 years old.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's so funny because my daughters make fun of me. They're like, Dad, you don't live in the hood no more.
Right.
And I tell them, but this was part of my upbringing where I'm from. And I think growing up like that instilled a toughness in me. It instilled a fire to not still have and live in that same situation. And really fueled me to wanting more. And this is where, I mentioned earlier, the mentors and the people that come through your existence to help you grow. My grandparents were really I'd say because myself and my older brother at this time, they were really our primary parents. My father wasn't around. He left at a very early age. And my mother was actually really young. When she had us. She had my older brother when she was 15, and she had me when she was 19. So she's graduating from high school while I'm, I had two graduations from high school.
Right, exactly.
One was hers, one was mine.
Right.
But she still went on to graduate. Like I said, she graduated, got her associate's degree, and she worked. So she was working two jobs while we were growing. So we lived with my grandmother for most of the time.
What do you think made you different, though? I mean, because there's lots of people that have grown up in that environment, right? There's lots of people that can play basketball or football or baseball, whatever it may be. But what made you different, do you think?
Bernice McGarry. Those are the two words I'm going to give you. Bernice McGarry. That was my grandmother. Unfortunately, she's passed away way back in '94 now. But she would often tell me, you're bigger than the village. The village is the area where we grew up. Your neighborhoods have, in Chicago, you got Little Italy, you have, Chinatown, you have, my area was called the village. And she would often and always tell, you're bigger than the village. You have to think outside of the village. And this was really the the catalyst to my thinking and really wanting more. My grandmother didn't go to school past the 7th grade, so she was very tough on us when it came to school. Same as my maternal grandmother, who didn't go past, much past that same age or around that same age as far as schooling, and who worked and cleaned houses. My grandmother Bernice, I just mentioned, worked in the laundry from the time she was, a little, young person for her whole life until she passed away. So they took their struggles and they imparted it into myself and to my brother. And like you said, what made me the one that took it, because my older brother, to a certain extent, did. He was a really good football player in high school. He played basketball in high school, graduated from high school, had the opportunity to go on to junior college and play football because his grades didn't match up. But then he eventually fell off the wagon and spent a large portion of his life in and out of prison. I think what was the difference between me and with others, like Jawan Howard and other friends that I have that grew up in similar situations, is I listened. And I truly wanted, not just to say I wanted more, but I wanted to live it and do it and be it. And even with that, there were times when, you're almost creeping and about to fall over onto the dark side. But then I would have someone that would come into my life that would pull me back over. The first person, like I mentioned, was my grandparents, especially my grandmother Bernice. When I started to fall over, my mother ended up meeting my then stepfather, Everett Johnson, who was a Chicago police sergeant at that time. I was 13 years old. I started hanging out with a lot of the gang members in my neighborhood who were my best friends, and started doing some other things that I should not have been doing. She ended up meeting him, and they were dating at this time. And now I have
now the police are in your house.
Well, no, actually, at that time they weren't living together.
Okay.
When he would basically come over every day, every other day. But now you have the vision and you have a visual of what a man is supposed to be. I didn't have that.
You didn't have that, yeah.
Right, I didn't have that. So now I see this guy. He's carrying himself well. We're talking. Speaking proper English. Now, the only bad thing about him is that he was a University of Michigan grad.
Yeah. Can't have that. Can't have that.
But other than that, so now I see him. And this gives me an idea, okay, then I need to start doing some other things the right way.
Right.
My mother allowed him to be able to be that father figure and mentor, which was huge for us. Then, say a year later, now I'm going to Simeon. I'm going to Simeon because my brother says, hey, I played baseball.
Okay.
One day I'm walking home from a baseball game. My brother pulls me onto the court, and I play basketball with him and some of his friends that were out there. On our way home, he says, hey, you need to play basketball. Forget baseball, you need to play basketball. And this was the summer between my 8th grade year and freshman year, well, almost the summer between my 8th grade and freshman year, where we're trying to decide where I'm going to go to high school. So in my neighborhood, there was Robeson High School, and then there was Simeon, in that West Inglewood area. My brother was like, you're going to Simeon. You're not coming to Robeson, which is where he was in school at. He was like, no, you're going to Simeon because you need to be under Bob Hambrick and
Basketball powerhouse, yeah.
Exactly. So I get there. I meet Coach Hambrick, and again, even with my soon-to-be stepfather in the picture and trying to guide me, I was still, not doing everything I should do. And I think this is where Bob Hambrick and basketball came in that really allowed me to focus on really doing better.
Got it. So, and that's a big deal, and I think your environment really establishes, kind of helps you where you go, right? So take your brother and you, raised in the same house, right, under the same roof. His choices may be different from you because, he had those same people in his life. But would you also think kind of getting plucked out of that situation and being, a highly recruited basketball player, your exposure to things were bigger than maybe your brother's, and then also going to the University of Illinois and, having a great education and all that stuff, was that a major part of your life, would you say?
Oh, no doubt. And once basketball started to kick off, and again, in the beginning, I didn't enjoy it, because I was a football guy. So I didn't enjoy it. But sitting and watching coaches come in to our gym and recruit Nick Anderson, recruit Irvin Small, recruit Deion Butler, and some of the other high-quality athletes that were on the team, I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is a good thing.
Right.
Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe I need to have myself here more often and doing the right thing. Now, of course, Bob Hambrick had a paddle, so it's a lot different today than it was then.
Right.
You practice.
You'd be in jail for that stuff now.
Exactly. You miss practice, you miss class. He had his rules. He had the paddle to kind of straighten you out. So didn't want to get the paddle.
Right.
So didn't miss class, didn't do these other things. And I think this is something else that really steered me along, which led me to meet Jimmy Collins and to meet some of the other coaches, Clem Haskins, unfortunately, Bruce Pearl,
yeah.
And to really start John Thompson, some really positive coaches that I was able to see. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is the right direction to go to. And even as a kid, I always, I started to grow, I wanted something different. To be honest, I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to become a lawyer, eventually to go into politics or to be a judge. This was kind of my early thought processes. So in order to get that, you have to get to college. You have to go to college. You have to have good grades. And I think these are the things that, talking to my pops and then talking to Bob Hambrick, and then, of course, my grandmother, they're pushing me in the right way, in the right direction, to the right thing. So when it came time to continue to grow as a basketball player, Simeon played a huge part of that. Bob Hambrick took a kid that had never played basketball until my freshman year of high school. And and through Irvin Small, who the way Bob Hambrick did it, he would take an upperclassman and pair him with a underclassman. That upperclassman had to teach that freshman or everything that he knew, everything that the program was about, and how you do things. So this is why often you'll hear me say Irvin Small was my first basketball teacher.
Yeah.
He was taking those cues from Coach Hambrick and passing them to me.
Well, he was a heck of an Illinois basketball player as well.
Yes, he was. And
Nick Anderson, I forgot. So he was. You guys were in high school together.
Yes, Nick was a senior my freshman year.
Okay, I'll never forget that shot Nick Anderson made against Indiana. Remember that turnaround shot from about half court.
One of the greatest shots. His shot and Andy Kaufman's shot to beat Iowa. Two of the biggest shots, probably the two biggest shots in the history of the University of Illinois.
It was incredible. So I digress. My apologies, but those were guys were your coaches, your mentors, and that helped you a lot.
It did. I mean, it helped me grow, and then you see how things are supposed to be. Not coming from and they lived in the same environments I did. Not the exact same neighborhoods, but the same environment. But going into Simeon, when you're under Bob Hambrick, there's one way you're going to do things, and that's Bob Hambrick's way.
Yep.
And once I understood that, I began to gravitate to that. This is what led to and a natural born, I have to say, a natural born talent to go along with great teaching and having the right mentors and people in the right place allowed me to be able to get my graduate from Simeon and then have a because of what I did in the classroom, a myriad of schools to choose from.
Yeah.
And, when it came down to it, my top 5 were Arizona, UCLA, Minnesota, Illinois, of course, and Iowa. And, in this, my grandmother knew nothing about basketball, nothing.
Right.
Nothing about sports. That was not her world, but her world was me, and she was mine. So we sat down, we went through the list of schools, and she was like, here I can come and see you.
Right.
Iowa's too far away. Minnesota is too cold. Arizona and Los Angeles, I will never see you. So, this is how we came down and made the decision on where I was going to school, because I couldn't go somewhere that she was not able to make it to.
Well, Illini Nation is thankful for your grandma too. Then that we got that she picked that, right? So,
I hope so, because I know I am.
That's right. That's right. So talk to us about that. Number 25, it hangs in the rafters, and it gives me chills to think about. I never obviously got to that level, but just the career you had, the history of Illinois basketball there. What's it like for you now when you walk back? I'm going to call it the Assembly Hall because it's still the Assembly Hall, and we still got the Chief Illini, all that stuff. What's it like when you go back to a game now?
Doing the radio for the University of Illinois, because I do the men's basketball, but every time I walk into that gym, it's a sense of coming home. Every time I drive into Champaign, it's a sense of coming home. I was with Josh Whitman, the athletic director, just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And during the basketball season, he informed me that I'm going to be a part of the Hall of Fame for this year's class.
That's right. And,
my first words of thank you to him was to tell him how the University of Illinois changed my life. It gave me, when you grow up in my neighborhood, the impression that you have of white people is not good.
Right.
Because the only people in my neighborhood were either the police,
right.
And of course at that time they weren't treating anyone well. So when I got to Champaign, to understand that everyone was not like the bad experiences I had in my neighborhood, really opened my eyes and taught me how to relate to other people, how to deal with other people, how to create friendships from people that were totally different from totally different places than I am. And that's one way that it changed my life. Not to mention the fact that, my education, a degree from the University of Illinois, Brett, goes, a long way. The relationships you build, the connections you build, and not to mention being able to do the things that I did on the basketball court
right.
with those friends, TJ Wheeler and Tom Michaels, and those guys are still friends of mine, my best friends to this very day. So
Tom he's been on the Circuit of Success before, and he's at my alma mater, Eastern Illinois University, doing great things there as the AD.
Yes, and that was my first roommate, and this is why I say meeting people for the first time that are totally different than you.
Yep.
When Tommy was my roommate my freshman year at Illinois. Tommy came in as a 19-year-old with a wife, with a child.
Yeah.
That was really focused on what he wanted to do in life. I came into Illinois as a kid that had an idea of what I wanted to do, that was still shell-shocked from, changing environments like that, changing situations like that, having to deal with the whole NCAA deal with Bruce Pearl and all of that. So I am a kid in flux when I walk in there.
And do they pick that? Do they pair you up with Tom Michael? Or, because you think you got it to your point, right? You got a guy coming from your neighborhood, and then you got a kid coming from the country, right?
Right.
How do they pair those two together, or did that just happen organically?
Well, I'm not really sure. I've never asked that question. I know everything is deliberate that they do in the basketball office. So you're rooming with another athlete. Today, that's a little different. They do things a little differently. But at that time, you were living with your teammates. And we were probably paired up because of positions. He was an inside player. Well, even though he stood out there and shot 3-pointers most of the time.
Right.
At 6'8", 6'9", we were paired up together. And I can't tell you, and I mentioned the people that come through your life that you learn from. I learned so much from Tom Michaels. And this is actually the first time I'm saying this. I haven't even told him that. But I learned so much from Tom Michaels and from his life situation. Then it just means a lot, because I don't think there are people that come into that situation that meet someone that's like Tommy, who surprisingly was not surprisingly, was so much more mature than the average 19-year-old.
Yeah.
And is one of the smartest guys that I know. And so he was able to help me navigate, my freshman year in a lot of big ways. He probably only tell you about all of the animals I had in my room with the snakes, and all of that stuff. Because
Right.
but probably wouldn't talk about those other things.
Well, I'm sure he'll listen to this, and now I'm sure he's pretty fired up, and I'm sure you're going to get a text message or something here soon talking about that. So thanks for sharing that. So,
Oh, my pleasure.
I mean, so speaking of that, of teammates, so let's take that into the business side. You know, a lot of people listening to this are in the business world. So how do we become better teammates? How do we become the Tom Michael for you? How do we do that for other people in our cultures?
Well, I'll tell you this, and this is one of the things that I have taken from coaching, and I think it applies to every bit of the business world. You know, I listened to Coach K in an interview one time, and he says when he has issues, basketball issues, he doesn't call other coaches. He calls his friends that are all business leaders and CEOs and things of this nature, because of the synergy and the overlap between the two.
Right.
If one of the most important things I learned as a coach when I'm putting my team together is you have to understand the personalities, the tendencies, and what people are good at. If you ask someone on the street, they think they're good at everything.
Right.
You know, but when you as a CEO or as a manager, you have to really be able to sit down, know who's working for you, and then be able to pair them up and put them in situations where, as what any coach would do, I'm gonna put you in the best situation to make you successful, so you're successful. So if you're a people person, I'm not going to take you and stick you in an office and somewhere where you're not dealing with or talking to people. I'm going to put you somewhere where your abilities shine. And I think this is where you can take things from coaching, from whatever, and you put that there. I'm going to put my best 5 players on the court. They can't all be 5'2" point guards that can't shoot.
That's right.
You know
That's
what
right.
I'm saying? Maybe one of those guys could be one, so then he could get the ball to other people where they need to be. So you really need to be deliberate in how you put your team together, the personalities of the people that are on those teams, and then put them into situations where they can be most effective to the organization as a whole.
That's great. Great feedback, great wisdom, because you're right. There is so much overlap in the business world, you know, that I played sports my whole life. And I'm thankful for that because of the losing and the practicing and the being deliberate with your time. I mean, all those things, you learn them as an athlete, right? And so whether my kids go on to another level, you know, or not, I have 4 boys, is irrelevant because the what they're learning today in sport is a big deal for the business world going forward.
You know, and it's so funny you talk about that, because when my wife and I got married, my wife is Israeli, so my wife isn't American. So she was raised, of course, a lot different than I am.
Sure.
But the one commonality that we had when we decided to get married was the girls have to play a team sport. They could choose the sport, but they have to play a team sport.
Yep.
And the reason they had to play a team sport is a lot of those things that you just mentioned. You have to learn winning and losing. You know,
Right.
You have to understand how, you know, when you lose, that you have to get back up. You have to learn that everything we do in this existence is not solely on you, but you are a part of a team and a part of a hand. And I had a guy that tell me one time, you know, what's more powerful? 5, sorry about that. Since
That's
I
all
have
right.
to speak, alerts are going off. What's more powerful, 5 or 1? You know, most people would say that 5 is, right?
Right.
And the first thing he told me was, he was like, you have 5 or you have 1. The 1 is more important. That fist is more important. So if I get all 5 people to act and work and move as one, then we're much more powerful. This is one of the things that I wanted my daughters to learn. You have to learn how to work with people. You have to learn how to differentiate between who is who on what given day, because everybody's not the same all the time. You have to learn how to take direction. You have to learn how to deal with when, you know, your bosses or your coaches, because you're going to get your butt chewed out every once in a while. And I would always tell them, don't listen to the tone, you listen to the message, because the message is what's important.
That's right.
Not the tone. I mean, anybody can have a bad day and come out and yell and scream and this and that. But where am I really trying to get from this in order to make myself successful? Because every manager, every CEO, every coach wants you to be successful, because if you're successful, then they're successful.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's that common mission, right? The culture you're building, the mission that you have, you know, our firm's mission. If we can go out and help people achieve a future greater than their past, and we all work around that, we win. Absolutely. And our clients win and so on and so forth. So let's talk about talent versus hard work. I mean, I'm hearing this all over your conversation today. Is it's one thing to be 6'9" and, you know, score, what was it, 2,129 points and have all the blocks you had. I mean, all the stuff, Mr. Basketball, that's talent, right? But I have to believe there was hard work that made that talent happen. Would you agree?
Well, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. You get nowhere if you don't put in the work you're supposed to. I mean, it's in the good book. You reap what you sow.
That's right.
You know, it's been there since the beginning of time. I don't know of anyone that's ever been successful by sitting on their butts, and it's not always enjoyable. I mean, you have to, you know, put in your work. When I'm preparing for whether it's one of the games on the radio or whether it's on the Big Ten network, I'm watching the previous 5 games.
Right.
You know, I'm breaking down the previous 5 games. I'm talking to the assistant coaches. Don't really have a whole lot of access to the kids, and don't really want it because you know, kids are kids. They're going to be scatterbrained. I want to get an inside look at what they're doing, who they're doing it with, how they're preparing, the games that they've played before, because a kid can say one thing, video will tell you everything. So I'm watching this and I'm preparing for this. So when I go on television or I'm sitting, I don't make myself look like a complete idiot because I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's right.
So that goes in every aspect of your life. I mean, people talk about my turnaround jump shot and how pretty it was. I can't even count the number of turnaround jump shots that I shot in my life.
Right.
And I mean, and it's so funny. The girls laugh at me because I still shoot them in the kitchen. Of course, I don't have a ball.
Right. Yeah.
But I am still shooting turnaround jump shots in my kitchen. Why? Because it's just, now it becomes a part of you and it begins to make things easier. And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
You playing any pickup basketball today? You got any the over 40 leagues that we're able to play in now?
No, to be honest, there are no over 40 leagues in my area in Naperville. I don't know if you remember Todd Wolf. Todd Wolf played for Michigan State back when Steve Smith and those guys were there. Great shooter. He runs a facility here. And I told him, I was like, man, we need to get some old man leagues going.
That's right. That's right.
Because he's older than me. So I'm like, we need to get some old man games going. But my biggest fear, and I played in a parents volleyball league the other day for my daughter's club fundraiser. And the only thing I kept thinking to myself was, please don't go out here and pop an Achilles.
Yes. That's our biggest fear. That's
our
biggest fear. Yes. So speaking of fear, let's talk about a question I always ask is the fears you put in your mind. So I'm sure you had those from where you grew up to the sports, to basketball, to, you know, life after University of Illinois. How many of the fears you put in your mind actually blew up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
To be honest, none.
Yeah. And that's the answer everybody says, right? But we all wouldn't you agree we all put those fears out there though?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Fear is the biggest motivator as well as the biggest enabler, not enabler, but the biggest
it's kind of glad it's the ceiling, right? It only allows us to go so far.
It'll stop and stunt everything that you want to do because people fall into a rut where they're afraid to make mistakes. They're afraid to fail. And you can't be, if you want to be successful, you cannot be afraid of failing. Because if you're afraid of failing, then you'll never try. And if you never try, you will never succeed. And the more comfortable you become with failing, and the more you learn from the failures that you have, the better you become. Well, I would train my daughter when she played basketball. You know, we'd go and we'd do some things on the weekends because, you know, as I would tell her high school coach, he's training you to work within the team. I have to train you to be a better person, ball handler, shooter, and all of those things. And I would tell her, you push yourself until you make mistakes. If you're doing a ball handling drill or you're doing whatever you do it in your daily life and you're doing it perfectly and you're not making mistakes, then you're not challenging yourself. You want to make mistakes. Mistakes are nothing but opportunities to get better. That's all they are. And this is something that I tell you, if she was here, she'd be like a little soldier. You'd be like, baby, what's an opportunity? What's a failure? She'd be like, opportunity to get better. you know. and it has manifested itself in her, you know, the teachings that my wife and I have put in her. You know, she's in her freshman year in Champaign. Thank God.
Yeah.
Her freshman year at Illinois. And, you know, she came out of there with a 3.2 GPA.
Wow.
I'm very happy with what she did as a freshman, especially, and you know, like I know you're going in and you're really trying to find who you are, what you're doing, and just finding your place. So Neuqua Valley High School did a great job of preparing her. But the very first thing she told me was that I didn't do well enough.
Wow.
You know, and I'm telling her the whole year she wants to be a vet. So she's in animal science. She got right into her program. She shadowed a couple of vets here in Naperville last summer before her freshman year. And so I'm like, well, you know, you should probably call one of them to see if you can get. She says, Dad, I got this taken care of already.
Nice.
I'm like, what do you mean? You got
yes.
like, oh, I start my paid internship a week after I come home. I'm like, paid internship?
Paid, right.
She was like, yeah. She was like, I've been working on this with Chris, you know, at that time. She was like, I talked to Chris 2 months ago. She was like, we all wait. I'm like, okay. Before, you know, the teaching her how to deal with and handle fear and failure, again, going back to sports as well, and going back to the into the teachings that we've always had, took that fear away. And not that she wasn't afraid to make the connection or the contact, make a call, but she didn't allow it to stop her. And that's where we have to get to, not just, you know, on the basketball court, but that's why we have to get to in life. Because I think more people, if they learned how to take it, process it, and then pass it, would be a lot more successful.
That's right. So let's talk about mindset. I mean, again, now we have talent. We go out, we work hard, right? We've done 9 million turnaround jump shots, or we've practiced our presentation in the boardroom 9 million times. But how critically important is that guy right up there?
The most important. Your thought process, your mental strength and mental capacity is the most important. That comes through preparation. If you're prepared, you have to trust your preparation and then move forward from there. A lot of people put roadblocks up in front of themselves because they begin to question, regardless of how much prep they've done, they begin to question once there are other people sitting in the room. Yep. You know, because not because they're worried about themselves. They know they've done all that they need to do. Their fear comes from, what are other people thinking? You know, is Mr. Smith going to like my presentation? Is, you know, Mr. Robinson or Mrs. Robinson going to think that I hit the right note on this?
Right.
Your preparation comes when you put in the necessary work, the necessary preparation. Then you've already won the presentation. You know, I'm a big John Wooden fan. John Wooden says, if you can look in the mirror and know that you've put all of your effort into it and into being perfect, then you're going to be perfect, regardless of what the outcome is.
Right.
Because the challenge isn't with the people in the room. The challenge is with yourself. And every time you can surpass that little bit of yourself that was trying to hold you back. And again, that's all upstairs. That's in your brain. That's in your mind. That's in you. If you can bypass that just a tad bit, you've already won. Yep. So no, maybe they don't accept your presentation that day. But what do? You go back, you tweak it, you come back and you present it again.
Right. Yeah, and I think to your point right there, the most successful people do that. Like, you just say that like that's just normal, but that's not normal, right? Because a lot of people's mindset is, oh, they don't like it. They're going to go home and, you know, get in the fetal position for a week and cry about it. But you can't do that, right? You got to bounce back like that and get after it again and go give your presentation another time.
You have to have what Bob Hamburg used to always tell us. You have to have amnesia.
Yeah.
You have to have amnesia.
No, you're right.
You know, and he would. There was one game I went first half. I think I was 0 for like 12 or I mean, it was horrible.
It was bad, right?
It was bad. So we're in the locker room. No, we came back out second half, and I got 2 wide open shots, and I didn't shoot the basketball. And this story stands out in my head because this was the last time I ever did that. The rest of the year. Called the timeout. No, he calls a substitution. I come out. He sit down. He was like, you know, you can't make the shot if you don't shoot it. he didn't say it quite nicely as that.
Exactly. He also had a paddle on his hand, right?
Exactly. He didn't quite say it as nicely as that.
Yeah.
But there we go. We talk about the listening to the message and not the tone. You know, went back in. I think I had 25 or 30 points in the second half, and we ended up winning the game. So, you know, this is what people have to get to, and this is one of the hardest things for people to do. Like you said, I did this. I've been doing this my whole life, so it's okay for me because I've been seasoned and trained.
Right.
They can also be seasoned and trained, and that's where, you know, you see people, they bring out motivational speakers, they bring out these people, but you know, they don't actually send them through with training. Yep. You know, you have to train to fail and understand that failure is nothing but an opportunity to proceed and get better.
Right. That's right. Well, I'm glad we're very much in line with each other. So what would you tell the Deon Thomas if you could go back now and tell that, you know, even that 25-year-old guy something? What advice would you give that young man?
You know, and this is going to come across probably you will look at the successes that I've had in my life on and off the court, and I would go back and tell Deon to be more focused and work even harder on the things that, you know, and to really look outside the box, but continue to work on those basics and work harder. At the time when I played, you know, if you were 6'7" and above, you were in the post. If you look at today's basketball players, you got Kevin Durant, 7'1", that's shooting the basketball, putting the ball on the floor. This is all about being complete and the completeness. And sometimes you have to look outside of the box of others in order to, you know, find your full potential. So you take the Michael Jordan analogy. Michael took one, and I wouldn't call it a deficiency, but one thing in his game that he didn't think was up to par every summer, and that's all he did. Singular focus on getting better. I would tell myself to put in that singular focus work and to get better at it, and to be and get more focused on some of those other things that you don't do well. This is what I do now.
Right.
And I wish I had known it then.
Yeah. So if you could go back, and I'm going to, even though I know you probably would be the same as what a lot of people would say, is you wouldn't switch places with anybody because you've enjoyed your life and your experiences, but I'm going to make you trade places with somebody. You got to go out, you got to pick somebody, and you want to be that person. And who is that and why?
Who would that be? That was from my circle, or just
anybody? Just anybody you think, man, that person, and whether it be for impact or just for the life they live. I mean, what would that person look like for you?
Wow, that's actually a really good question. I have never thought of that one before. But you know what? You know, one of the things that I love now, and that I try to do on a constant basis now. You know, sports and those things have been my whole life. I would love to switch, and I don't have an individual person, I'm sorry. But
no, that's all right. That's all right.
You know, but if I could switch with someone that has learned how to use their hands to create things and structures that you could see on a daily basis. You know, a lot of my creation, and again, don't think I would change my life one bit, really.
Right.
Maybe have the lights on and something to eat a few nights
right.
out of it. But to be able to, I do a lot of my creation and trying to help young people and things of that nature from the inside. So when that happens, I get a lot of satisfaction for it. I had one of my former players just call me 2 days ago. He just graduated from college, and he was like, "Coach, I wanted to tell you I graduated. Couldn't have done this if it wasn't for you." And I love that, and it fuels me. But if I could have built the Golden Gate Bridge, oh my God, you know. So now I'm getting into these things where I'm trying to do a lot of things with my hands, where I'm really trying to learn gardening and those types of things.
Yeah.
That's a part of my life that I want to get better at. My best friend is in construction, so he's going to come by and help me build my deck. And I told him, I want to help build this deck. I don't want you bringing your crew and you do this, because that's the part that, you know, has been something that really has always interested me. But I've always been, you know, of course, the athletic part and more the part up here than actually the hands-on doing. And that's what I would love to have to be better at, and I will be better at it.
Got it. So what, talk to us about Illinois basketball and you're there. Tell us maybe one of the best games or one of the biggest highlights for you in your career there. I mean, obviously you had a lot of them, but what was one of those best games you could share with our listeners?
Well, I can give you two. I never played the sport of basketball like most people say, well, you know, they were playing to get to the NBA. That was never my focus. My focus was for me to get out of the village and off of the west side of Chicago to have a better life. And that didn't necessarily mean making it to the NBA, even though I was drafted. But you talk about a game, this first game, and this is an easy one for you, is the day I broke Eddie Johnson's scoring record.
Yeah.
And when I broke that record, to be honest, I didn't realize that I had done it until they stopped the game. And then they start the announcing and talking about it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, this is about me.
Yeah, you know, Jerry Hester, because Jerry had the assist when I broke the record. Jerry comes and jumps on me, and they pause the game, and my grandmother comes out on the basketball court.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, that was one of the biggest moments for me, was to see her face while we were out there with Coach Collins and with Coach Henson. That is one of the proudest moments and the biggest moments for me. But again, not because of the scoring record, but for a woman that had made so many sacrifices for me to be able to give, you know, not really give that to her, but to have her be a part of that was absolutely amazing. And then the second one, of course, you know, we mentioned great shots, and the greatest shots in Fighting Illini history was Andy Kaufman's shot. For the listeners that don't know, this was right after that time, you know, we went through this whole issue with the University of Iowa and the NCAA investigation. So I had a bitter pill in my mouth for the University of Iowa, even though Bruce Pearl had been fired for lying. But even though I had a bitter pill in my mouth, and there was no way on God's green earth I wanted to lose to the University of Iowa. I mean,
that was your Super Bowl. It was everything.
Exactly. So we're playing them, close game, coming down to the end with a matter of seconds. Iowa takes a shot. We're battling under the board for this rebound. And the ball hits my shoulder and bounces into the basket. They score. Iowa goes up. I think there was definitely less than 5 seconds. Maybe around 3 seconds left on the clock. You go through the whole roller coaster of emotions at this time. I mean, we're walking over to the bench. Coach Henson called a timeout. I'm broken.
Right.
But, you know, I can't be broken, you know, because I am the face and the leader of this team. I can't be broken, you know, so I'm putting on the strong face as I walk over to this bench. But in my brain, I'm like, crap, I just lost the game for us. So coach draws up a play. TJ makes a great pass to Andy Kaufman. Andy, one dribble, shoots it. Ball goes through the basket. Of course, Assembly Hall goes nuts.
Yeah.
I wish someone had the camera on me for like the first 3 or 4 seconds. It seemed like 10 minutes.
Right.
I had no clue what to do. I'm standing there with this look of excitement and things on my face. And then all of a sudden, you know, of course, the pandemonium goes crazy.
Right.
You know, everyone's jumping on Andy Kaufman. But just the roller coaster ride of emotions at that time was off the charts. I mean,
That's
so those
incredible.
were, you know, the two. I mean, and then, of course, there's some things professionally, you know, where we won the European Championship. And
sure,
unfortunately, I broke my leg in practice before the second one.
Oh.
But, yeah, those were two of the biggest moments that, you know, in my life.
So when I say the word Lou Henson, what comes to your mind?
Great teacher, great mentor. And one of the strongest, for a smaller, meek man, one of the strongest people I've ever met in my life.
Wow. Heck of a coach, huh?
Oh, man. You know.
The Lou Do.
The Lou Do. People ask, how was your relationship with Coach Henson? I didn't particularly like Coach very much when I played for him at Iowa. Not that I disliked him.
At Illinois, you mean? You said Iowa there.
Did I? Oh, at Illinois, of course.
You're still fired up about that game.
It might have, no doubt.
Right.
But while I was at Illinois, didn't really particularly, and I won't say I didn't dislike Coach. I respected him, but the player-coach relationship was different at that time. That your assistant coaches were really the ones you dealt with on a constant basis, and then the head coach was kind of there.
Okay. Yep.
You were called to the head coach's office. You had done something that you weren't supposed to do. So after I graduated from the University of Illinois, after I was playing professionally, I had to sit back and I called Coach one day, and I told him, thank you. I was like, while I was there, I didn't understand all of the things that you were trying to teach me and all the lessons that you were trying to give us. I was like, I understand them now. I understand the importance of being prepared. I understand the importance of being on time. I understand now that when you would make little snide comments to try to get under our skin to motivate us and push us, I get it now.
There was a reason, yeah.
Yes, there was a method to the madness, and I didn't get it at that time. But very thankful, very, very good, smart, and strong man.
I love it. So what are Deon Thomas's passions today? What do you wish you had more time to do? You talked about working with your hands, but what are your passions now?
My passions are my babies. After playing as long as I did and then going directly into coaching and being an athletic director for 5 years and then coaching at the Division I level for 2, didn't have an opportunity to spend a lot of time with them.
Yep.
Missed most of my oldest daughter's high school playing career and did not want to miss my youngest daughter's volleyball career. So I spent as much time with them doing the things that they want to do or need to do. But at the same time, that's a huge passion of mine. But I think the reason I'm here and I've been put on this earth is to help others that grew up in situations like myself.
Yep.
So I spend a lot of time talking to young people. In my position that I'm currently in for the university, I'm the community relations coordinator for the university system. So
Okay.
I spend a lot of time in high schools talking to high school kids, trying to inspire them to be better, to get off or get out of the west side, south side, east side, because you can have more by being more and by putting more into yourself. Learning how to trust and love the others that are around you and the people that are trying to help you. So I spend a lot of my time really with kids, my kids and other people's kids. Right. So those I think would be, my two biggest passions is really just helping people grow, helping people motivate. And then I do, some corporate and public speaking things. Again, it's back to being a coach. Awesome. That's what I am. That's what I've always been.
I like it. Well, Deon, where can our listeners find more of Deon Thomas? You a big social media guy? You got a website? Where you at?
Well, I'm putting the website together, but they can find me on Twitter at Deon Thomas 25, for Twitter. And It's actually the same thing for Instagram. So
okay.
I spend a lot of my time on there posting a few things. I am considering writing a blog to add to my Wix page, which is also Deon Thomas.
All right.
Process of having others building a website as I continue to build the brand. And then, of course, during the fall on the Big Ten Network as a college basketball analyst and with Illinois basketball on the radio with Brian Barnhart.
Nice. All right. Well, Deon Thomas, my man, leading scorer in the history of the University of Illinois basketball. That probably doesn't get old hearing that. That's a big deal. And, I've enjoyed having you on the circuit of success and chatting with you. So thanks for joining us today.
Right. My pleasure, man. Anytime. Thank you.